In this presentation, we will take a look at the process for backing up the QuickBooks data file and comparing and contrasting that to just copying and pasting the QuickBooks actual file. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are on the home page. We currently have the open windows open. In order to open the open windows, we want to go to View and then the Open Windows list. We're going to go ahead and back up the file. Before we do so, we want to know where we're going to put the backup file and what will the backup file do. Here is our company file. We're going to open up the company file. And within the company file, we set up a documents file, we have a backup file, and we've got the data files. The data files are where we actually have the information. So if I double click the data file, here's the information in the data file. If we go back to the backup file or back to the prior folder, here are the backup files. Now note, in practice, we don't want the backup files and the data files in the same location. We probably want them on two different drives or possibly one in the cloud, the backup possibly in the cloud. But for demonstration, we're going to put them in the same location so we can see them, and it might be necessary to do that for some reasons, such as if we just want to transfer the data in some way. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a few different files, and from this point forward, work on them in different levels of complexity as we kind of diverge and go into different directions based on what type of decisions we make in terms of what we want to do for the company. So what I'm going to do here is go into the QuickBooks data file. I'm going to make 3 folders for 3 different data files that we're going to have. And we're going to use these different data files as we test different ways that we can do the bookkeeping process. So I'm going to make 3 folders. I'm going to right click and have new folder. I'm just right clicking in the blank space. You can also do that by clicking this item up here. And I'm just going to call this QB1. And I'm going to put all of this information here into QB1. Now notice this is all just stuff that's related to this current QuickBooks file. In order to do this, you're going to have to close the QuickBooks file that you're in. So whatever QuickBooks file you're in, go ahead and close the QuickBooks file. And then I'm going to take this information, just highlight it and move it into QuickBooks 1 after the data file, after QuickBooks has been closed. We can do this one by one by just dragging it in there. Or we can highlight all of it by selecting all of it and then dragging it in there. And so I'm going to skip and I'll drag this in and drag in. It doesn't want to do that. All right, I'm going to keep that there for now. So the QuickBooks data files can be a little bit messy because of all the different types of files in there. I'm going to make a QuickBooks 2 here. I'm hoping that's not going to cause us a problem. And we're gonna say new folder. There it goes, QuickBooks QB2. Okay, and so this is where I'm going to put another file. Now, one way we can do this if we want to have 2 actual files is to obviously go back into QuickBooks, copy the data file. I'm going to try to just copy this file and just right click and copy it. Go back to QuickBooks, going to go to QuickBooks 2, right click and paste. Okay, so that's going to be one way that you could do this, and hopefully we can double click on this. We'll try to open this file to see that that works. That's one way that we can copy the data. However, it's still a QBW file, which means it's quite large in size. So that's why we don't typically do that as a backup or a copy file, typically just because it's large. And so what we'll do now is we'll save it as a backup file. And the backup files we won't be able to open, but we can then restore those files. So to do that, I'm going to try to open this one to see if it works. And I'm going to open it not by opening the program first. The program is not open now. I'm just going to double click on this file. And it should then open up the program and open up the file if it has been copied correctly. So it looks like that has worked. It's opened. We have another full copy. It's not a backup, really. You can think of it as a backup, but it's not a backup file type. It's an actual file. So we have 2 files now of the QuickBooks file. Now, if you do this, remember that you're going to have to know which one is which. Otherwise, we're going to enter data into the wrong file. So we want to be careful, make sure that we know that we're working in the proper file. Now we're gonna do a backup file, and let's go back to our folders and see where we want to put the backup files. We're back in our folders. I'm going to go back to the QuickBooks files here. Here's our backup files. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make 3 folders in the backup files. I'm going to make it a QuickBooks 1 backup, and then we're going to make it a QuickBooks 2 backup, and a QuickBooks 3 backup. I'm just going to right click and make 3 folders. QuickBooks 3. So then this is kind of like what we might do if we had different company files. We want to make sure that we're in different folders there. We are going to be in the same company file, but we're going to have 3 variations of that from this point forward as we test different kind of routes that we can take in our model. Right now it doesn't matter. I'm just going to copy it to QuickBooks 1 because they're all the same. We haven't diverged the data at all. And then as we go forward, when we make up the backup copies, we want to know, are we going to be working, which of these 3 file types will we be working in? So what we're going to do now is save a backup copy to this file, and we'll compare and contrast it to what the just copying and pasting of the file has done. Here we are back in the software. Now the backup process is pretty straightforward. We just go to the file drop down up top. We want to back up the company. So we're going to back up the company, and then we're going to create a local backup. So we're going to create a local backup. We get a window such as this. We want to put it to the local backup unless you want to create online backups, and you can take a look at that option. Could be a good option in order to get the backups on a separate server, then separate computer, separate hard drive, then we have our information on, or you can save it to a separate hard drive, an external hard drive or something like that. We're going to save it here, which will be somewhere on the computer or some connection to the computer. So we're going to say next. Then we're going to browse for the location where we want it to go. Note, you have a couple options down here too. So we can limit the number of backup copies to 3 so that it'll basically ask us if we want to delete a copy if it's more than 3 copies. And that's kind of nice because then we might not need more than 3, or we could change it to whatever we want and have multiple there. Or remind me to back up when I close the computer every 4 times or so like that. That'll give us a reminder when we close the computer. It'll say, hey, you haven't backed up. Do you want to back it up? And then this one says have the date and timestamp, and that's what we really want. We want to know the date on there, and that's going to differentiate the files so they won't overwrite each other because it'll have a different file name by date. The date will change and the time, and so that'll change the file name so we don't have to deal with that issue. And it'll make a new file. It won't overwrite the prior file, and we'll be able to see which is the newest file. So all those defaults are usually pretty good defaults. So then we're going to go to Browse up top. And it's got this kind of drop-down format first to find the file. Ours is on the desktop. We are in the Guitar Lessons and Equipment folder. And then we're going to go into the Backup Files. And I'm going to put it into Backup 1. So that's our location. So you can see it's kind of the same browsing location, but it's a little bit different with the drop-downs to find it. So then we're going to say OK. And then OK. It's going to say, hey, it's on the same location as your original file. Don't you want to put it on a separate location? I'm paraphrasing. and that's going to be usually what we would want to do unless we have the backup for some other reason, just then to have a backup file, such as if we're going to give it to someone or something like that. But if it's for a backup file, then yeah, we probably would want it on a separate drive, an external drive. But we're going to use this location for now, and then we're going to say next. And then it gives us the same kind of drop down, a window browse type function that's probably more familiar to us, but it's still in the same location, desktop. That's where we want it. And so we're going to say, here's the name that it gives us. It gives us the name and then the timestamp here, which is nice. And it's a QBB file. So that's different from the QBW file. So now we're going to save that, and it should create our backup file. Once we've done this a few times, if it's our only company, the backup files become pretty easy because it'll know where the folder should be, and it'll automatically delete after 3 files if we tell it to do so. And so everything's pretty straightforward. If we have multiple companies, then, however, of course, juggling around these backup files and our data files becomes a little bit more difficult. We got to make sure we know where they're going. Now, if we go back to our folders over here, we're going to say, okay, did it go where we want to? Here's our Get Guitar Lessons on the desktop. Backup files. It's in QB1, and here's the backup file. And so you can see it's a Get Guitar Lessons. It's a backup file, and the size is going to be much smaller. If we tried to open this, it wouldn't work. If I just double-click on it, it won't happen. it won't be able to open it because it's a backup file. This is like a zipped folder. We have to restore it to do that. In order to do that, we got to open the program first and then restore it. So we'll take a look at that process next time. If we go back to the QuickBooks file, going back to this first folder and going to the data files, not the backup, but the data files, and compare that to what's in QB1, we could see that here we're going to have the larger file. And of course, that's one of the major issues, that the file is going to be much smaller for the QuickBooks file that's going to be backup here. So that's one reason that we want the backup files to save the space. It also doesn't generate all this other stuff when we restore the backup file. So I'm going to go back to this folder, and also if we double click on this one more time, notice this is a QBW file. That's the other way you know if it's a backup file or the actual file. They look very similar in the icon, but the QBW versus the QBB is the difference. So I'm going to go back here. Now we have two files that have been restored, because one we just copied. I just copied this one over, and the other is up here. We're going to make one more now. We're going to go to QB3, and this is where we're going to practice restoring the file, the backup file we just made. We're going to restore it, but not to the same location, not to here. We'll restore it to QB3 now. That's what we will do next time. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.